Greetings, YouTube. I have decided to make a work table, and I had some luck, and the luck is those blue legs. Now they're not even at the moment. I don't know why, but one of them is slightly shorter, but I can fix that in a jiffy. But I lucked into these two blue legs, and they're steel, they're welded, for nothing. I got those as salvage from work. They were going to throw them away. They were going to recycle them, and so I asked my boss, "Can I have those?" She said, "Yes." What I don't have is cross pieces to go between them to give, so I don't have anything to go to long. These are going to go the short. These are going to go on one side, and I need the leg. I need the supports in the other direction. So these are at the moment obviously not going to go this way. Because that's wider. They're going to go the other way. And I'm going to have some overhang, and I'm okay with the overhang because I actually have a plan for the overhang. So the overhang actually may end up being slightly asymmetric. I haven't decided yet, but I'll get to that in a moment. And so I have this to make the other supports. So I need supports going this way as well. And this was also salvaged. This is just some free channel lock that I got because it's a bed frame, and I found it by the side of the road. So it cost me nothing. So I can cut this up, and I might be able to get both pieces out of this. I'm not sure. I have another one, so I've got the material I need to work with. But it's nice thick channel lock, and it's what it is. It's an L-shaped piece of steel. And that's what I need. And I will even be able to use those smaller sections that currently have wheels on them for something else. If maybe, heck, I don't know, maybe because I don't know if they'll be long enough. We'll find that out. Because if they're long enough, I'll just use those. I don't know. I haven't taken all the measurements yet. But again, so my buy-in to this stuff right now has been pretty minimal. This is going to be the top, and I don't remember what I paid for that, but I think it's 3/4 inch plywood and pre-cut, so I didn't have to do any cutting at all on this one. And that's going to become the shape. Now the reason I may want to have an asymmetric setup is that I have a vise for a workbench that'll hold a piece of wood or some other object vertically, and it won't work on this bench because there's nowhere for it to go. It has to have a place for the screws to go that lets you clamp. So it mounts to the underside of your table, but it needs a direction for a space for those to go. And so I think once I get this laid out, I'll be able to figure out exactly how much travel it needs. And if I can, I'm going to put it on one side, right in the middle, probably. No, actually, one on end would probably be smarter, James. Put it on this, and then bolt the whole thing together, and then that way it will allow me to have a classic woodworker's table clamp and in my shop. At the moment, I don't have that, and mounting things vertically can sometimes be a little difficult for me, and but that would make my life a lot easier. This already has 2 holes mounted in it. I'm debating I may want to put a third one in the middle. Maybe not, because I can put as many holes as I want to in the one I'm going to cut. So I could put 3 holes in that. If I had 3 holes in those, and then 2 holes in this, that's 8 holes. That may be enough bolts around enough screws to hold it in place. And I'm going to end up having to use Phillips heads, even though I don't like Phillips heads, because the only screws I can get short enough to not go all the way through a 3/4 inch piece of plywood are going to be Phillips heads. Yeah, not ideal in my book, but it is what she is. You work with what you got to do. You work with what you have. So I'm going to cut the channel here so that it will fit all the way in here, and that way I can bolt the whole thing together like this, and then screw the other section. So obviously I'll have the L bracket going like this, and bolt it here. And it'll be slightly below that, but who cares? The screws aren't going to care about that 1/16 of an inch difference. And then screw up through the holes I drill in the L bracket to hold everything together. So this will be attached together, and the hole is already there for me, so I don't have to worry about that, and I can assemble that before the top goes on. And so there's a lot of already cut things in this, which makes my life so much easier. And getting these for free was really nice. And they're nice and sturdy. I still can't figure out why the heck the guy who took this apart took out that one screw. Why the hell did you do that, Mike? I don't know. But I'll make it work. I promise. I'll make it work. I have lots of bolts and nuts here, so I can replace that without a problem. So this is going to be the project that will hopefully help me build more projects in the future. I am going to need to get some kind of really robust coating for this, because at the moment I don't know what the best coating for this is. So I have to go to the hardware store for something else, and while I'm there I'm going to say, hey, what would you recommend for coating a worktop surface, which is going to be plywood, because I want to have it as durable as possible. I'm also probably going to want to knock these edges off a little, so I'm less likely to hurt myself on those, because let's be honest, if I can set myself on fire, I can hurt myself on a workbench corner. I knocked these off a little bit when I installed this in, because this is one of these. Because this workbench was the same size, top was the same size as the bench itself, and it was soaked in oil because the guy who owned it before me was into guns, and he did a lot of work on this with firearms. So there was a fair amount of oil soaked into that. It was a press board. It wasn't plywood. It was a press board top, so it absorbed the oil fairly well. So I put this on top of it, and the big advantage being is I can always replace that very easily, flip it over if I want to reuse it, and it also meant I could get a bigger vise on here with a little more space on it. Get more room on the top of even though it's covered in junk. Yeah, I know it's covered in junk. It's kind of the story of my life. But yeah, so this is going to be the next thing that hopefully will make my other projects much more easy to accomplish. Yay! So here we have the essential configuration that it's going to end up with when I'm done. So the plywood is going to be the top, so it's on the bottom. That metal shelf is going to be a metal shelf, and it's going to rest here on this. I'm going to have to cut out notches from the shelf to fit on there, but that's okay, because once I get it, bolted in place, it's not going anywhere. And if I need to reinforce it, I'll reinforce it. I can do that. I have that technology. Speaking of reinforcement, this piece here, which is a T-shaped piece of steel, quite heavy, is going to be going between here on the top. So from that corner to that corner, we'll have a support, and I'll have that. I'll notch it out so that it sits flat against this, and will offer support both to hold it against the plywood and to support it side to side. Since this entire shelf will be acting as bracing, this thing right here is just temporary for demonstration purposes. I shouldn't have any instability whatsoever, because that's going to act as a omnidirectional support, so it's not going to have any torquing. And lastly, this vise right here is going to go onto the table as well, and that's going to end up here. So when the table is, so it's actually going to be installed in that corner way over there. So when the table is right side up, it's going to be right here. Obviously, I do not have this all squared out and everything. Obviously, there's a little bit more space on that side and that side. And if I need things to be, and realize that with that shelf being here, there'll be more wood, so I can actually center this whole thing on the wooden top, the plywood top, and that will have plenty of space. My only concern is that that is really meant to be going into a big, heavy woodworking bench, which is thicker than plywood. So I don't know what I'm going to use for fasteners on that. If I have to, I will use bolts that have the domed heads, so that they will not cause me a problem. So it won't be perfectly flat, but they'll be fairly smooth, and I will get them to be the same diameter as those holes to get the maximum amount of holding strength. because I don't think I can use wood screws on that. On the legs and on the crossbar I can get away with wood screws because there will be multiples of them. That's only going to have 4 in place, and that's going to be a very dynamic device because it's a vise, as opposed to the plywood top, which is static and is going to have weight on it. So I'm not really worried about keeping the legs attached to the plywood because, again, I'm going to drill multiple holes. There will probably end up being, when I'm finished, probably 4 holes in each cross piece, and then there's going to be an L bracket. Yeah, and then I may put some L brackets in those corners as well to, again, hold it to the table. So this is going to be doing a lot of the work because I can get that flat against the plywood in a way that these legs will not be flat across this plywood because they stand proud slightly. I'm not 100% sure if that little lip is on the plywood, and I have to test. If it is flat, I will drill holes in that and then put in screws that way, which will be kind of annoying because it's going to be, you know, inside that little beam. But again, I'll make it work. If I have to, I'll use a bit driver in a right-angled drill adapter, which I have. I have a DeWalt right-angled drill adapter for a power drill. The one thing I do have to do is fix this leg because for some strange reason it's collapsed. I'm not 100% sure why. I think because there's no fastener in it. The other 3 have fasteners in it, so I'm not sure why this one doesn't, but it doesn't. So I'm going to have to pull that out, make sure it's the same length as all the others, and that's adjustable. So if I find I don't like the height when I'm finished, I can always make an adjustment. And fine-tune adjustments are made with those little feet, which can be screwed in and out, because I can guarantee you that my floor is not going to be level, because look at my floor. Look at my floor. My floor is not level. It's patched everywhere. This is an old house. So that is what it's going to look like when I'm finished. So my next task is going to be disassembling this. This is, again, I put this together just for this video segment and to get a mental idea of what it's going to look like. Disassemble this thing, get this thing apart, and I may temporarily put a brace from here to here, because I have holes to hold everything together until I get that metal shelf here on the bottom. So that may be a temporary situation, but that's okay. Temporary is fine. It'll essentially be scaffolding, and you know, scaffolding isn't permanent. Alrighty, I've got 2 of those little T-beams I got right there, T-shaped beams, which is good because this width here is actually wider than the than half of that. So I've got 2 of those, which is a good thing because I'm going to need them, and the rest will end up in some future project or something like that. Yeah, that's what this is going to look like when I'm finished. At least that's the plan. We're going to find this out if I can pull it all together. Okay, so disassemble this carefully so I don't make a big mess, because balancing this thing and getting it together was a bit of a job. But now I can take it apart and hopefully not have it fall everywhere on me, because I'm doing this solo. And put that clamp away. I don't need the clamp right now. It's just in my way. So start taking some measurements, figure out where I want things to be, and then start working on fastening these legs in place. If I can get these legs in place, I will be using, again, this is scaffolding, but if I can get those in place, use this as scaffolding, or put that angled piece in there actually bolted to the legs, that would make my life a lot easier, because then I could work on the side-to-side brace. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. There are going to be multiple steps to this operation, and again, I'm doing it solo, so I'm going to have to take it slow. Be careful. Alright, I've done a little layout. Now you get to see what my handwriting looks like. It's not good. So I've made some decisions here. I'm going to go with this lighter L bracket for the 2 pieces to go between the legs. It's got holes already in it, so I don't have to drill anything. It's salvage. I got multiple pieces of it, so it'll be really easy to cut. That other piece would have had drill holes in it. It was far too heavy. This, I've got a bunch of stuff with this, and you can tell that's salvage. I have never cleaned it because I never used it. I just pulled it out of the garage. That was salvage, as was that. And I'm going to use these as support under the metal shelf to make sure everything's going to stay nice and stiff. I don't want anything flopping around when I'm finished, because there will be some overhang on the shelf from the notches I cut out. So I don't want that to get weak. So this is going to be reinforcement for that. All right. Then I have decided to go with 1/4-20 carriage bolts here, because they'll have a smooth top. To the bolt head is smooth. It has a square under section, and that will bite into the plywood and hold everything together. And on the bottom you'll see a threaded and a nut. So I have to get. So it was 48-inch long piece of plywood, 27.5-inch legs. The middle is 13 7/8, 3/4 rather. So I've already drilled these. I'm just going to go at 3 holes. Those 2 holes are not symmetrical. I don't care. It's going to be on the underside of a table. You'll never see it. That one's in the middle and pretty much center because I drilled that one. So I'm going to have 10 1/4 inches off of each end, which is ample space for my vise. So I'll be putting that right up to the edge on the table, and it'll be held in place with those 4 carriage bolts, as I mentioned. I'm going to need 5/8-inch lag bolts to go from under here into the plywood. So if I use 5/8-inch lag bolts, they're not going to come through. The plywood is 3/4 of an inch thick. I'll make sure I put a collar on my drill bit so the drill bit does not go through the plywood when I'm drilling my pilot holes, because I always want to drill pilot holes even in plywood. It makes my life easier. So I'm going to need a box of those 5/8-inch lag bolts. I'm going to need 4 1/4-20 2.5-inch bolts, because I want to replace the ones that are down there right now, those, because they're in really bad shape and it's a weird size. It's not 1/4-20. I think it might be metric. Get rid of that. Just use 1/4-20s. I like those. I need to buy a new box of 1/4-20 nuts because I'm almost out. And I'm going to need the carriage bolts for this. As far as holding the metal shelf to there, I've got 3 holes there now. I'm probably going to figure out where I want to have holes. I may reuse one of those. That one on the left side looks pretty good. The other ones may not be usable because I don't know how centered they are. I don't know who drilled this thing. It wasn't me. Don't blame me. This is salvage. So I'm going to use just standard 1/4-20 bolts for that, and I have ample supply of those, so I don't have to buy anything there. And those were dirt cheap. Like I said, I paid like $2 for an entire jar of those, and I'm down to like the 1/3 level because I've used so many of them in projects. I'm going to sorely miss that jar when it's empty. It's Peter Pan smooth peanut butter. I may have to buy some 1/4-20 bolts and just pour them back in there just for nostalgia's sake. So those are the things I need to pick up before I can continue this project. I am not going to go any further today. I am tired, so I'm going to put my stuff away. Yes, you actually heard that right. I'm going to put my tools away. Actually, I see. Watch this. Watch this. Watch. Whoop, whoop, whoop. It goes right into my pen holder, which is a tin can. So there you go. I'm going to put some stuff away, straighten this up a little, and then go upstairs and relax because it's my day off. So next week I'll get the supplies I need. I'll send myself an email so I can take that with me. Actually, technically, I could scan that as a PDF and take it with me. Or I could fill it in email so I could actually read the damn thing. Because even I can't read my handwriting sometimes. So put stuff away and then pick up my supplies for next week and then continue with this project. But now I have the layout completely solidified in my head. Not saying it won't change between now and completion, but now I have a really good idea what I'm doing. And that right there is a task in and of itself. I now have these two legs at the same height, and I've put new pins at the bottom, new bolts at the bottom, because the bolts that were in there were in such bad shape that they wouldn't accept nuts any longer. The threads had been destroyed. So I got new ones in there. They're all locked in. And I lucked out that this side of the legs have holes. So I have two holes because I'm going to be putting a cross piece between these two legs. They'll be in the opposite position. Actually, this is going to be on that one other side because I want this to be the flat side to be the outside of the table. And I don't have that same thing on this end. So on this end, I'm going to have to drill a hole of my own. So I need to now measure that out, mark it, and then drill a hole. And I'm probably going to go one step up from a 1/4 20, because the 1/4 20 is what I'm going to be using. I mean, those were 1/4 20s, and I have again replaced them. I'll be tossing them both because they're in horrible condition and because they're slot-headed screws, and I don't like slot heads. I like them even less than I like Phillips heads, and I don't like Phillips heads. So get rid of those things, clean up the space a little bit, and then mark and drill the two holes on the other side so that I can, put the two cross pieces in, which I'm going to have to do before I get these attached to the top of the table. Now this hole presentation here, I think I have 3 holes in. Yeah, I'm just going to reuse those 3 holes. I see no reason not to use those 3 holes. They're already here, so they are not going to, need me to drill anything. So I'm going to use those 3 holes to hold this to the table. And then I will be using the cross pieces to hold it to the table. And since the downward pressure will be this way, they're probably going to end up to be like, let's see, 6, probably 12 fasteners holding the table to the legs. And I think that's enough. Again, I'm not going to be moving this around a lot, so I'm not concerned with that. And I'll be using these. Now, these are technically sheet metal screws, but they were one of the only screws I could find that had the pan head, which is what I need. They are Phillips head, which I despise, but I don't have much I can do about that. But they were the right length, 1/2 inch. Now I would have preferred 5/8, but I couldn't find any 5/8 fasteners readily available at a hardware store, and I did not want to have to go through the hassle of having to order some. So I'm going to just use these instead. I will drill a pilot hole. I forgot to get myself a stopper ring for my drill bit. I'll have to go back upstairs and get that. So those are going to be used holding everything together. And again, I know I prefer 5/8 because the top is 3/4 of an inch, so 5/8 would have worked better. But 1/2 inch is what I got, so 1/2 inch is what I'm going to go with. I also got myself some new gear. I got myself some knee pads because part of this job is going to require me to be kneeling on the floor as I'm trying to get this thing set up onto the top, which will be upside down while I'm doing that process, both drilling those holes and then attaching it together. So I'll be doing a lot of kneeling. So I got myself some Cobalt knee pads, and I'm hoping those work out for me. I have not tried them yet. I took an upgrade. These are gel padded, and they have a flat spot because I don't want to have my kneecap moving around as little as possible, because my right kneecap likes to move around on its own. It's not something it's not really designed to do that because my knees don't work well. So I would like something that's going to give me the minimum amount of movement when I'm kneeling on the floor. I'm hoping these will do it. And they're not all that cheap. It was 30 bucks for these. Though there were some that were like 60. I don't know, I can't remember what brand name they were. And they were even more stable because they had like feet and stuff, and they were even wider than this. It was kind of impressive. So, but I guess that, people who spend all day long kneeling down doing a job would definitely want those kind of knee pads. I don't need something quite that specialty. So 30 bucks investment in preventing myself from having pain is something that is worth my time at least. Alrighty, so drill some holes, attach the side, cut the side pieces to width, attach the two side rails, and then then I'm going to have to probably temporarily mount a cross piece between these two legs, because I need to be able to lift this whole leg assembly up and turn it upside down, and I can't do that if it's only attached at the top. So eventually there's going to be a shelf on the bottom, and that shelf will be the stabilization I need, but I can't do that until I've got the lid, the top tabletop on, and then I flip the whole thing back over again. And I need these legs to be stable to accomplish that. So I will have to put some kind of cross piece between them on the bottom, even though that will not be a permanent attachment. That is just going to be something that's temporary until I get the metal shelf on the bottom, which will tie everything together. And I'll be reusing the holes in that as well. And I'm indifferent if the shelf has bolt heads showing. Really, I don't care. It's just a shelf for storing things. Okay, so time to do some layout and some drilling. So both of those holes are now done, and we've had a slight modification to our plan. My initial concept was to make sure that the outside of the legs were flush with the edge of the table, but I need 22 inches on center for that to happen, and these don't fall in that, so I would have had to have drilled a hole very close to an existing hole, which is never good. So I'm just going to make them come in slightly, I mean literally like 1/8 of an inch probably when I'm done, maybe 1/4, so that I can use these brackets without having to modify them any more than I have by just cutting their length. So I can go here to make that happen. So now I'm in the bolting everything together stage as far as these are concerned. Once I get that done, I then need to come up with a bracket for the bottom that I can then hold the table, the bottom of the legs exactly the same width as the top of the leg, so I make a somewhat stable structure. Because it's not going to be super stable, because it's only going to be held in place by 4 bolts plus the brace at the bottom. It just needs to be able to be flipped end to end so I can get it onto the piece of plywood so that I can then lay out holes for drilling. Because that's the next stage, laying out the holes in the wood to be drilled, and I've already picked out which bit I want, so now I need to take that bit upstairs and get a collar. I actually don't have any drill bit collars down here. I'm not 100% sure why, but I don't. Probably because I don't drill a lot of wood, in all honesty, when it comes to precise depths. I drill through wood a lot, but I don't drill upstairs. I'm more likely to find myself in a situation where I'm going to drill through a specific distance if I'm attaching something to a blind object, you know what I mean? I'm not ever going to go through that piece of wood. I just need to attach something to the wood. That's much more likely to happen actually in my dwelling space as opposed to my shop. So I need to get a collar for that so I can set the depth. What if I don't have a collar that fits just some blue painter's tape? That will work as well. So let's get assembling. So here we have the legs upside down on the top. I apologize if the lighting isn't great where I'm in at the moment. This is a portion of the basement I do not normally shoot in, but it's a nice big empty space I can put this down in and to do some layout. So I have not taken the measurements yet to make everything be perfectly square and everything. I haven't done that yet. I just dropped this on here. So those two braces, the two gray ones, are now attached, and I had to do that before I did this because I had to put bolts inside these steel tubes, so I couldn't do it afterwards. So those are now attached, and I can no longer take those off once this is assembled. And this right here is just a piece of channel stock I actually got for free. Somebody was giving it away, and so I've got that acting as a temporary brace. This thing still racks like a son of a gun, which is why I'm going to have to finagle things as I'm going. And I just noticed that I put the bolts and the nuts on different sizes of these things. I may change that. But I'll do that last. It will not be something that's a priority at the moment. The priority at the moment is squaring this up and then marking where I need to drill my holes for the screws, because I want to pre-drill every single one I want to do. Now I am going to have to mark this so that I know which one is which. So I'm going to have to put a mark on that corner, and then a mark on the plywood, that corner right there, right? And then mark on the plywood so I get that corner back in that location. That's going to be important because the holes that are in this thing were drilled by a madman, because the holes that were drilled in that blue crosspiece are not related to each other in any way. So they just kind of blew 3 holes through so they could attach something. I don't know why they did what they did, but they did. That's what they did. These are salvaged. These are scavenged legs. I got these for nothing. So I'm working with what had been done to this prior to my possession. So I need to make sure I get that in the right location, because if I get it turned 180 degrees, it's going to be very frustrating to have to turn it all the way back around just to figure out why I couldn't get the holes to line up. That will bug me. So do some measurements, get this squared up so I'm happy with it, and then use a marker to both mark the location and to mark all the holes so I know mark the holes so I know where to drill. And again, I'm probably going to put 3 screws on this side. I got a lot of holes, maybe 4 on this side, and then 3 in the centers. So yeah, I can get 4 in there without any problem. And so long as I use the round holes, because these gray cross pieces have both round and square holes. If I use the round ones, the screws I'm using fit perfectly. They're a little sloppy in the square ones, so I won't use those. And then I may fix those 2 bolts right there, simply because if I know that, it's going to bug me over time. And it's a heck of a lot easier to change that while it's up in the air as opposed to on the ground. Speaking of being on the ground, I'm wearing my knee pads because I had to do some kneeling, and they work really well. The first time I didn't tighten them up enough, and I had to reset them and tighten them up a second time, but they work very well. They're very comfortable to kneel on, so I'm very happy I have these. The $30 is well worth the cost for my eliminating future knee pain. Okay, so get a measuring tape over here, start taking some measurements, get this thing centered, and then start marking holes. The top is now attached to the legs with 6 screws in the center and 4 on each end, so that should be enough, I think. And I was able to get to those in here because they're kind of in an awkward position. With this tool, which is a Klein tool offset ratcheter, holds standard 1/4-inch bits. Absolutely brilliant design, because with this ring, you can just put your finger in there and push and pull to your heart's content while you've got your other hand holding the bit in place. Brilliant design. Absolutely worth $15 from Home Depot. Well worth your time. Alrighty, so now it's time to flip this over. Make sure I get the legs at the proper spacing. I want them to be exactly the same spacing on each side, because I need to set up and begin to mark how I want to fit the shelf I'm going to use on this table, which is, I believe, going to need some machining work. We're going to find that out as soon as I can get this thing flipped over. I've marked out the notches I'm going to have to make in the table, and I'm going to cut on the outside of those red lines. And the table, now that it's upright, absolutely rock solid in this direction, but this way I got some racking. So when I'm done installing this, I'll see how it goes, see if that helps, because each side of this is going to be held in place with 3 bolts. There are already holes in the railings on the bottom. In fact, I'm using one of them right now to hold that cross piece in there. Again, that's just temporary. And when I will then remove that and mark where I want these to go, where I want those holes to be in this, because they're going to have to go on that side. And then when I'm done, we'll see how strong it is, and if it's still getting me too much racking like this, I will put some cross pieces in there to stiffen it up some. But in this direction, this way, it's nice and solid. So, I think I'm just going to clamp this thing right here. And just pull an extension cord over here, clamp this thing in place, and cut them right where it is now. Let the table start doing its earning its pay, so that I can get these notches taken out. And this right here is going to where that carpenter's vise is going to end up. When I'm finished, I'm going to mount it here, right in this spot, halfway between, centered on this somewhere. I'll figure out that measurement is and I'll center it on that. So I'm going to clamp this thing down on both ends, and then I can start cutting. All 4 notches are now cut. And I end up with 4 of these, which I'm going to keep because I might be able to turn those into brackets of some kind. I mean, they're nice and stiff, right angles, pretty decent steel. Might find use for those some days. You know, who knows? So now I'm going to put this on the bottom and then use clamps to clamp all 4 sides in place. I'm going to have to get a C-clamp out of it. I think I've only got 3 small ones of these. I may have 4 of them. If I have 4 of them, I'll use all 4. I'm not sure. I like the quick clamps. They're awesome. Clamp it in place. Then I can turn it over again and mark where the holes need to be for the bolts. 3 bolts here. Pity that these aren't going to line up, but they're not going to line up. That would be very, very convenient because this thing came with holes already in it. But to say, put that back over there, and I'm going to have to take that bracket off probably. Yeah. No, I can lay it on top of that. Just going to be temporarily. That's what I may do. I may clamp it in place, just drill right through it. Why bother marking them? Just drill holes right through the thing, use the holes themselves as the guide. Yeah, I can do that. Just take the bracket off, put those in there. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. Haha, I'm smarter than I thought. The bottom shelf is now attached fully. There's not a lot of support on the end because that section in the middle is not supported between those 2 posts. But I'm not worried about this end bending down because remember, this section is up against that leg. So if you put any pressure here, you're putting pressure on this. So since I'm not going to be standing on this, I'm just going to be storing stuff on it. So it's going to be a static load. I'm not really worried about this. This is not going to be a dynamic load situation. If it was, yes, I would want to reinforce that. But I don't need to. I used 5 of the holes. One of the holes over there on that side was too close to the middle. I don't know who the heck drilled these holes. Those 3 were good enough for me, but the other one was way too close to the middle, so I drilled a virgin hole on that one. And it is far more stable, but I'm still, well, one of the problems is the floor isn't even, and I haven't tweaked the legs yet, so I'm still getting a little bit of racking. I'm going to put this in place where I'm going to permanently locate it, get the legs tweaked because the little plastic feet have threads on them, so I can bring those down to where I want them to be, and then see if it's still not stable enough for my taste. I may just use it for a while and see if I like it, and if I do like it and I don't think it needs any more support, I won't put any more support, and if I don't like it, I will. It's that simple. So yeah, I'm really damn happy with this. This is 1.5 inches lower than my workbench, so that's not a problem. So now I need to lay out, check the time first. Now I need to lay out the vise so that I can drill the holes for that and then attach it. But that's only a 4-hole process. And I can use the device itself as the drill guide, so all I have to do is clamp it in place. So let's go try that next. The vise is now installed. I've used 4 carriage bolts and I polished off the letter codes that were on the top of these. Most bolts have some kind of a code on top. Letters, sometimes on a lot of hex heads you'll see lines, and the number of lines and their configuration will tell you what type of bolt it is. I don't have that memorized, but I do have a reference upstairs if I ever need to know exactly what a bolt is and I don't know. So I polished off the letters so that these were relatively smooth. These have no jaws, and I'm thinking of using this old cutting board that I picked up at a thrift shop. It's decently thick. I'm thinking of cutting just 2 strips, boom, boom, and then drilling holes. And it should be enough that I can get a threaded wood screw, a short one, in there without going through it and thus, risking marring whatever I'm holding in in the vise. Now, this is designed specifically to be mounted on a woodworker's bench. So this would be flush with the top because the woodworker's bench would be very thick. They're like, this thick. And in fact, the holes at the bottom of this are chamfered for wood screws. So I'm not using this in the correct manner. And I encountered a problem while installing it, is that these 2 bolts, I don't know why these 2 worked so well, the nuts went on without a problem. I put these 2 in, I could not get the nuts on. No matter what I did, I could not get the nuts on. I had to remove the bolts, which is when I discovered that the threads at the beginning of each bolt, just these 2, not these 2, were not good. So I had to go to my belt sander and put a chamfer on there to make them go away. Then I could then get the bolt on here, the nut onto the bolt, and then pull it all together with, a wrench. So that was very frustrating. In fact, getting these 2 bolts in place took longer than finding a clamp, clamping it, drilling it, installing these 2. Just getting those 2 nuts on there has taken me almost half an hour because I was just trying to figure out why won't these nuts go on, and my brain wouldn't accept the answer, which is the bolt's not good. Fix the bolt. My brain kept going to, you're doing something wrong. And that would be my anxiety, depression, and PTSD coming home to play. But the clamp is now in place. We're good. I have come to the conclusion that I really do need to install a brace, because that is just too much racking. Look at that. Look at that. That's not good, because it's rock solid in this direction and it's not in this direction. So I'm not going to do that today. I'll hold off on worrying about that. So I'm going to put my stuff away, clean up a little, get upstairs, try to relax, because I found myself getting very frustrated about these bolts here, and frustration for me, it makes a very short leap to anger, and I don't want to be angry, and I'm tired. So go upstairs, clean up, relax, and tackle the rest of this project next week, or actually maybe tomorrow. Maybe I can get to it tomorrow. I don't know. I got tomorrow off today. I took a 3-day weekend. In fact, I'm filming this the 13th of November, 2021. I have no idea when this will go up. And in the months of November and December, I only work 20 days, which is pretty awesome. I take a lot of my time off at the end of the year. Alrighty, so one more day hopefully, and then this project will be complete, other than having to clean the shop up a little and put this in place and then balance the feeties, but that's not a big deal. It's nice having legs that have feet I can balance, though. That is a nice feature. Okay, one more day I think, and then the table will be done and I can start using it. It's done. It was a bit of a pain to get finished. Drilling those bottom holes was a bit awkward sitting on the floor. A lot easier to drill these top holes here, but the table is now rock solid. And those 2 pieces of strapping I'm using there, this flat stock, came out of a score I made of somebody giving away a shelving unit. In fact, the bottom shelf of this project is from that same shelving unit. So those 2 pieces were the cross pieces that were in the back section of that shelving unit. In fact, you can see where I had to cut out the pivot that put them together. And I still have 2 sections of material that I can use for some other projects, just other strapping that I didn't use, because these are 33 inches long, and I think the pieces were 48 originally. I didn't measure them. It wasn't that important to me. So now this is completely assembled. So now I'm up to the vise job, and this is the material I'm going to be using. So right now I'm going to mark that off right now. I just clamped it in here. I'm going to mark the 2 holes, mark that, and then I will drill holes, and I will drill, and I will cut this off. and I haven't quite figured out what would be the best method. I may just use my 4.5-inch circular saw on this. It's probably the easiest thing to use to cut this material. It's no denser than wood. So that's the next thing. I got to cut 2 of those, drill 2 sets of holes, 1 in each, and then you know, deburr it and stuff like that, and then assemble it. And then those jaws will be done, and this vise will be operational. Finally done. So I've actually started to use the bottom shelf on this. I haven't finished. I haven't figured out how I'm going to be doing this. I'm thinking of putting something on the ends that I can hang things from. I haven't decided how I want to do that yet. So that may be something I get. It's like pick up a towel rack or something from a hardware store, from a thrift shop, and then I can use hooks to hang things from the ends. That might be the way. Or I could just screw short things like cup hooks directly into the bottom of that tabletop. You know, there's a bunch of different options I could use to take care of make access of the ends in a way that maybe is slightly more useful than they are now. Not too far out from the legs though, because I want to be able to have the ends of the table open so I can use for clamping, and that's one of the nice things about this whole setup, so that I can get clamping in here and I can clamp here. This is the clamp here and here. This is a little bit more difficult because I have to clamp all the way down, but on these ends it's only 3/4 of an inch thick, so that makes clamping very simple on this situation. Now, just as I had said earlier that getting these 2 bolts in was super simple and getting these 2 in was not, just because circumstances happened to be I grabbed the 2 best bolts for these 2 and the 2 worst bolts for these. Getting this jaw on this vise was super easy, because this jaw moves with these circular cylindrical bars. So they come in and out. The screw turns and moves them in and out. The problem is that my measurements weren't perfect, which is why they're not sitting flush on the top. But they're the same gap, so I don't quite care. It does give me a step down for holding things this way if I want to, though. But the one thing I didn't take into account was that because this didn't matter if it was slightly snug, this did. So suddenly I discovered that the distance from the center hole to the rods, which wasn't a problem on this side, put friction on this side. And I tried belt sanding some off the bottom, and it was just very frustrating. So I ended up just cutting some notches. So I put 2 notches, 1 above each rail, and that means that there's no contact between those rods and those jaws any longer, So it means opening and closing the vise is not a difficulty. So, I mean, it's not a huge vise, but I'm sure that I will find a use for it, and it is gives me more clamping options other than my my plumber's vise over here, because this is called a plumber's vise because it's got the ability on the inside to grab pipes and tubes, which I find very useful when I'm working on weapon builds. But this one over here will also mean I can clamp 2 objects at the same time and have them available if I need to for, you know, fitting things together or taking measurements and things like that. And here's a sneak preview of something. I don't know quite what. But I'm very happy with this setup. It works out very well. The only difficulty I'm having now is that there's no light. Yes, I know that you're being blinded by the single light above me, but there's no light directly above this table. So I'm going to have to do that. I have no power outlets over here, however, which means I'm going to have to run a bunch of extension cords, which doesn't thrill me, or I may just break down and hire myself an electrician, because I would really like to get some dedicated lighting fixtures in here. I've got the fixtures. Let's put it this way. I've got 3 shop lights in here right now. One over my main bench, one over the sanding station, one here on the end near the vise, because that's where I have a lot of my lighting needs, because I work on that vise a lot. But all of those are running off of extension cords. It's really not ideal, to be honest with you, not ideal at all. So I'm going to want to probably have dedicated boxes put in for those, get a dedicated box for the bench itself, and then I could get one set up for over this, because that would also mean I would be able to have a box up there for both a light and for power tools, so I won't have to run extension cords across the floor, which is a safety issue. So yeah, that may be something I want to break down and do. Also, my mother-in-law, I would like to get her a dedicated front doorbell. She doesn't have one. We have one of those wireless ones, which isn't the best option. And since we're in the basement and everything's open, there's nothing closing off access to, getting wires run to the first floor. It'd be really easy to do that. But yeah. So that may be something I want to do, which is, get a dedicated light on for this table, so I have more ability to see over here. Alrighty, so I'm very happy with this overall build. I think it came out very well, and it's wicked cheap. I mean, the whole vise was like $10, I think, less than $10. Maybe $10 if I count the fasteners. But the top cost me, I think, about 10 or 12 bucks. The legs were free, the shelf was free, the supports that both go diagonal here and the ones that are underneath in there, those were all free. So those were all low cost components, and the fasteners that put them together were just, a box of sheet metal screws essentially. And a lot of some of the fasteners I used, like the ones that used to hold the diagonals on, I already owned them, so they didn't cost me much. They didn't cost me anything at all at that point for this project, and they cost me very little when I bought them originally. So yeah, I have now 2 workbenches, so I'm very happy. This means that I will be able to have more options for laying things out, for working on stuff. Make sharpening easier, because now I can just put my sharpening stones on the table with a cloth under them and sharpen away, and not have to worry about setting up an entire table to hold the sharpening stones, because I didn't want to put them on my main workbench and get the workbench oily. So now I just have to put down something, find a piece of sheet of something I can lay down there real quick and then set them up over there, and that'll be awesome. So thank you for being here for this probably way over long video. I apologize, but it's been weeks of work on this, a little bit of time because I just don't have a lot of time on the weekends, but this took me way longer than I wanted it to. Because there were things that stopped my process on more than one occasion, sometimes depression. Alrighty, so thank you for being here. I hope that you'll be here for the next crafting video, and do take a minute to check out my other social media links. I would greatly appreciate it.